In San Vicente, Mang Pedro's life was shaped by the sea. Each dawn he faced its trials, believing in its hidden gifts. One still morning, as he rode into a silent ocean, hope dimmed. Casting his net repeatedly, emptiness echoed his worry. Determined, he made a final, heartfelt attempt, praying for fortune and the sustenance his family sorely needed. In the small coastal town of San Vicente, nestled between the mountains and the sea in the Philippines, lived Mang Pedro, a humble and hard-working fisherman. His skin was bronzed by the sun, his hands calloused from years of casting his nets, and his boat, an old bangka passed down from his father, creaked with age. He had spent nearly his whole life working the sea, rising before dawn each day to provide for his wife, Aling Maria, and their 3 children. Life had never been easy for Mang Pedro. The sea, though vast and full of life, could also be unforgiving. Some days he would come home with only a few small fish to sell at the market. Other times he would return with nothing but an empty net and an aching heart. His family waiting patiently for his return, never complaining about the small catch. Despite this, Mang Pedro never lost hope. He believed that the sea was both a provider and a teacher, and that one day his patience would be rewarded. One early morning, long before the sun had risen, Mang Pedro woke to a strange stillness in the air. The wind, which usually carried the salty scent of the sea, was absent, and the stars above seemed dimmer than usual. Aling Maria stirred beside him, sensing his unease. "Pedro," she whispered, "why don't you stay home today? The sea feels different." Mang Pedro smiled softly and shook his head. "I can't, Maria. The children need to eat. We need to sell something at the market today. I'll be careful." Reluctantly, Aling Maria nodded and Mang Pedro gathered his gear. He kissed his sleeping children on their foreheads and quietly slipped out of their small bamboo hut. Outside, the village was still dark and silent, save for the occasional rooster's crow. Mang Pedro made his way to the shore where his boat waited, tethered to a rock. He untied it and, with practiced movements, pushed it into the water, climbing aboard as he began to row out toward the horizon. As the boat glided through the water, the sea seemed unusually calm. No wind stirred the waves, and the usual chatter of seabirds was nowhere to be heard. Still, Mang Pedro continued onward, determined to bring home a good catch. After rowing for nearly an hour, he reached his favorite spot, a deep cove where fish often gathered in abundance. He cast his net into the water and waited, silently praying for a bountiful haul. But as the minutes passed, the sea remained eerily still. He pulled in the net, empty. Mang Pedro frowned, confused. He knew the sea like the lines on his weathered hands, and this spot had never failed him before. He cast the net again, and again he waited. An hour passed, and then another. Each time he pulled the net, it came back empty. Frustration and worry began to creep into his heart. The sun was now high in the sky, and he knew that he needed to return soon. He couldn't bear the thought of coming home empty-handed again. He decided to cast his net one last time, praying with all his heart. As he hauled the net back, it felt heavier than before. His heart leapt. Perhaps this was the catch he had been waiting for. But as the net broke the surface of the water, his excitement turned to disappointment. There were no fish in the net, only a strange object, a rusted, barnacle-covered old lamp. "What is this?" Mang Pedro muttered, pulling the object from the net and examining it. It looked like something from an ancient tale, the kind of thing one might expect to find in a treasure chest, not tangled in a fishing net. He sighed, tossing the lamp into the boat, frustrated by the day's poor outcome. He turned his boat toward the shore, the weight of failure pressing down on him. The sun was beginning to set by the time he reached the village. The people who lived in San Vicente were kind-hearted, but they were also struggling just like him. Many of the fishermen had returned with small catches that day, and the market was quiet. Mang Pedro knew that what little money they had left wouldn't last long. As he pulled his boat ashore, Aling Maria was waiting for him. She could see the weariness in his eyes and the weight of disappointment in his posture. She smiled, trying to lighten his mood. "Did you find treasure, Pedro?" she asked playfully, eyeing the old lamp. Mang Pedro chuckled bitterly. "Only this old thing. No fish today, Maria. I don't know how we'll manage." Maria picked up the lamp, inspecting it with curiosity. "Maybe it's more valuable than it looks," she said with a glimmer of hope.